The day my father brought his bastard son home, I was in the middle of closing a $3 billion deal. My assistant Kevin's call came through, his voice shaking. Mr. Rhodes, the chairman. He. Spit it out, I said, my pen not pausing for a second. He brought a young man back to the office. Said, he's your brother. The nib of my Mont Blanc scratched a long, ugly black line across the signature page. I set the pen down and stared out the window at the bleak, gray Manhattan sky. So, the day had finally come. Understood, I said, hanging up. I slid the signed contract across the mahogany table. A pleasure doing business with you, Mr. Davies. The man beamed, his face crinkling like a dried flower. Logan, you're a true prodigy. With you at the helm, Rhodes Corporation's future is limitless. I stretched my lips into something that might have passed for a smile. Limitless? I wouldn't be so sure about that. Back at the office, the atmosphere on the top floor was suffocating. Everyone was glued to their screens, pretending to be intensely busy, but I could feel their ears pricked up like antennas. I pushed open the door to my father, Walter Rhodes's office. A young man was sitting inside, probably in his early 20s. He had my father's eyes, maybe 70% of his features. He was dressed in a faded polo shirt and jeans that had seen better days. His expression a strange cocktail of timidity and raw ambition. A walking contradiction. You're here, Logan, my father said, his tone flat, betraying nothing. This is Alex. I didn't look at the kid. I kept my eyes locked on my father. And my father's brow furrowed. He'll be your brother from now on, and he'll be joining the company to help you. Help me? An interesting choice of words. Which department? He'll shadow you for now. As your deputy. I almost laughed out loud. Some backwater nobody, a product of my father's infidelity, was going to be my second in command? My father was really laying it on thick for him. Alex stood up, shifting his weight awkwardly. Bro, he mumbled, looking at me. I ignored him. I walked over to my father's enormous desk and picked up his personal corporate seal. Dad, I've given this company 10 years of my life. I began, my voice as calm and steady as a weather report. From the time I was 16, auditing board meetings, to taking this seat at 26. I haven't taken a single vacation day. Never dated. Never did a single thing you didn't want me to do. Now, I said, I'm feeling a little tired. I placed the seal gently on the desk in front of him. This position should go to the most capable person. Since you think he's up for it, let him have it. The color finally drained from my father's face. Logan, what is the meaning of this? The meaning, I said, turning to face the dumbfounded Alex, is that I quit. The words hung in the air. The office was so quiet you could have heard a pin drop. My father, Walter Rhodes, the man who had worn the mask of a patrician, old-school titan of industry for decades, finally showed a crack in his facade. He must have expected me to yell, to make a scene, to demand answers like some soap opera cliché. Too bad for him. That script was overplayed. Say that again, he said, his voice low and dangerous. I said I quit. I repeated the words, placing my own six-figure fountain pen on the desk beside the seal. The CEO position and every project I'm currently managing are now in the hands of this fine son of yours. I gestured toward Alex. The kid's expression morphed from shock to a flash of pure ecstasy, which he quickly suppressed, replacing it with a mask of phony concern. Not bad acting, but he needed more practice. Bro, don't be like this. I didn't mean for. What you meant doesn't matter. I cut him off. What matters is I'm letting go. The question is, can you handle it? My father slammed his hand on the desk. You goddamn punk. Are you threatening me? You've got it all wrong, Dad, I said with a smile. I'm not threatening you. I'm giving you what you want. You've always felt like you owed him, haven't you? Well, now you can give him the entire Rhodes Corporation to make up for your guilt. Isn't that wonderful? Without another word, I turned and walked toward the door. Stop right there, he bellowed behind me. I didn't break stride. I pulled the door open to find Kevin and the other executive assistants huddled outside, their necks craned like nervous turtles. Kevin. Yes, Mr. Rhodes. From this moment on, Alex is your new CEO. I clapped him on the shoulder. Take good care of him. Kevin's face went white as a sheet. I left them there and headed for the elevator, my father's enraged roars and Alex's pathetic attempts to console him fading behind me. What a performance. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside, looking at my reflection in the polished steel walls. The expensive tailor-made suit, the perfectly coiffed hair, the eyes dead and empty. Starting today, that was going to change. The elevator hit the ground floor. I walked out of the revolving doors of the Rhodes Corporation Tower into the bright afternoon sun. I pulled out my iPhone and dialed number. Yo, Leo. Logan. What's up, man? Didn't expect a call from you. Get your flashiest Ferrari. BSF 90. Pick me up. What's the occasion? I'm going clubbing. I hung up, loosened my tie, and tossed into a nearby trash can. A wave of relief, lighter than anything I had ever felt, washed over me. Rhodes Corporation? The heir apparent? To hell with it. Tonight, I was going to make up for 10 lost years. The next big thing wasn't a stock or a company. It was living in a moment. And I deserved to be spoiled, too. When Leo's Ferrari SF90 screeched to a halt in front of me, its scissor doors lifting like wings, it turned more than a few heads. I slid into the passenger seat. Damn, Logan, what boardroom did you just escape from? Leo joked, eyeing my suit. I just flipped the damn table, I said, unbuttoning the top of my shirt. Take me to the most expensive club you know. Tell them to bring out all their top girls. Leo stared at me for a second, then let out a low whistle. Whoa, somebody light a fire under your ass. Something like that, I said, leaning my head back and closing my eyes. Let's just say I've had a revelation. That night, at a club called Orium, I booked the largest private suite. Bottles arrived as if they were free. A flock of chattering Instagram models and influencers surrounded me, their cloying perfumes giving me a headache. But I didn't send them away. I just drank quietly. My phone buzzed nonstop on the table. I didn't have to look to know who it was. My father, the board members, the old guard. I switched it to silent. A scantily clad girl leaned in close, trying to pour me a drink. Let me get you another one, Logan, she purred, her voice dripping with manufactured sweetness. I used to hate this kind of thing. Tonight, I just smiled. I took the glass from her and downed it in one go. Again, I have no idea how much I drank that night. The last thing I remember is Leo practically carrying me home. I woke up the next day to a pounding headache and sunlight stabbing my eyes through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my penthouse. I grabbed my phone. Dozens of missed calls. And a single text from Kevin. Mr. Rhodes, the chairman insists you return to the office today. There are urgent matters to discuss. I tossed the phone onto the bed. Urgent matters? How urgent could they be? He probably just wanted me to come back and clean up his bastard son's messes. Not happening. I got out of bed, showered, and then did something my father would never have imagined. I opened my walk-in closet and started pulling out all my expensive suits, tossing them onto the floor in a heap. Then I called a high-end personal shopper. Give me the latest from every streetwear brand you can find. I don't care how loud or ridiculous it looks. I want one of everything. That afternoon, dressed in an outfit that looked like a graffiti-covered wall had thrown up on me, I drove Leo's Ferrari to the city's most exclusive supercar dealership. My father hated me driving fast cars. A waste of time and potential, he'd called it. Today, I was going to waste as much as I possibly could. I swiped my Amex and bought the latest Lamborghini Revuelto, paid in full. The salesman looked like he was about to have a heart attack. News travels fast in this city. I had barely signed the paperwork when my father's call came through. This time I answered. Logan, what in God's name do you think you're doing? His voice was a low growl, barely containing its rage. Buying a car, I replied lazily. Dad, did you forget? The shares mom left me pay out some pretty hefty dividends every year. My mother died when I was young, and her stake in the company had been in a trust under my name for years. I never touched it. Until now. You. He stammered, choking on his anger. Dad, you're the one who said I should learn a thing or two from your other son about having a little soul. Well, I've decided that spending money is the most soulful thing a person can do. Besides, Alex wants to be CEO, right? The former CEO has to put a little pressure on him. How else is he supposed to grow? See? I'm just being considerate. Everyone needs a little TLC, right? All I could hear from the other end was his heavy, ragged breathing. I figured I was one sarcastic comment away from giving him a real heart attack. Perfect. Anyway, gotta go. I have a spa appointment. I hung up before he could reply. Hearing the dead air on the line, the smile on my face widened. This was only the beginning. Walter, Alex, are you ready? In this movie, I'm the director. For the next month, I became a regular fixture on TMZ and Page 6. Rhodes air spirals after ousting, parties nightly, spends millions. Logan Rhodes' 7-day fling fest with IG models, lumbos, and bikinis. The downfall of a corporate prince. The emissaries my father sent to talk sense in me, from company veterans to family elders, formed a near-constant line outside the door of my new villa. I refused to see any of them. They couldn't get past the gate and could only pace outside in frustration. Finally, my father ran out of options. He came himself. That day, I was lounging by the pool with Serafina Vance, the latest Oscar-winning actress. I'd paid her an astronomical sum, not for her company, but to put on a show for my father. The butler announced his arrival just as Serafina was straddling my lounger, rubbing sunscreen on my back. Mr. Logan, the chairman is here. Let him wait, I said without opening my eyes, enjoying the feel of Serafina's soft hands. Is that a good idea? She whispered in my ear. Why wouldn't it be? I opened my eyes and met her gaze. You took my money. You follow my script. Serafina smiled faintly and said nothing more. We dawdled outside for nearly an hour before making our way into the living room. My father was sitting on the sofa, his face a mask of cold fury. The ashtray on the coffee table was overflowing. Had your fun? He asked, his voice like ice. Not even close. We're just getting started, I said, wrapping an arm around Serafina and pulling her down onto the sofa opposite him. She played her part perfectly, snuggling into my side. My father's glare was so sharp it could have physically cut her. She tensed for a moment, but a reassuring squeeze on her waist made her relax. Logan, the company needs you right now, he said, his tone softening. Oh, is that so? I feigned surprise. I thought Alex was doing a bang-up job. A muscle twitched in my father's jaw. He's still learning. Well, let him learn. You always have to pay tuition for an education, right? I said dismissively. He looked like he was about to explode, but he reined it in. There's a problem with the Southbridge project. I need you to go back and fix it. The Southbridge project. Of course I knew about it. It was the last thing I was overseeing before I left. A $5 billion mixed-use development deal. The thing was a political and logistical minefield. I would bet my new Lamborghini that Alex, the incompetent fool, had been played for a sucker by our partners. Dad, you must be mistaken, I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. I'm not the CEO of Rhodes Corporation anymore. Company business has nothing to do with me. That sounds like a problem for CEO Alex to worry about. Logan, he finally shot to his feet. Are you determined to do this? To fight me at every turn? Not at all, I said, holding up my hands in mock surrender. I'm just enjoying my life. You're the one who keeps interrupting. He pointed a trembling finger at me. You are a truly ungrateful son. He stormed out. Watching his retreating back, the curve of my lips only deepened. You seem to really hate him, Serafina murmured from beside me. You're talking too much, I said, looking at her. Sorry. She immediately looked down. I tilted her chin up. But your performance was excellent. For your next scene, I whispered in her ear, you're coming with me to Napa? I'm buying a vineyard. A flicker of understanding lit up her eyes. She knew what this meant. The show had to get bigger. It had to convince everyone that Logan Rhodes was finished. A washed-up, spoiled brat with nothing left. The news that Serafina and I were in Napa hit the headlines the next day. Logan Rhodes and Serafina Vance in Napa getaway. Engagement rumors fly. The photos showed me with my arm around her, grinning like the idiot son of a billionaire playboy. And we did have a good time. We toured vineyards by day and dined at the French Laundry by night. And in the end, I really did buy a winery in the hills of St. Helena. It wasn't huge, but the views were breathtaking. The day I signed the papers, another text came from Kevin. Mr. Rhodes, the Southbridge project has completely stalled. The partners are citing breach of contract and suing for $1 billion. The board is in chaos. The chairman has been hospitalized. I read the messages, then raised a glass of Cabernet Sauvignon, fresh from one of the winery's oak barrels, and took a sip. A good year for grapes. Something on your mind? Serafina asked. She was sitting across from me, wearing a simple white dress. Nothing, I said, setting my glass down. Just thinking this Napa cab is a little too sweet. She looked at me with a complicated expression. She was a smart woman. She'd probably figured out what I was doing. But she didn't ask. Our relationship was simple. I paid, she performed. We both got what we wanted. Where to next? She asked. I said. It's time for the climax. When we landed back in New York, the airport was a zoo of reporters. Camera flashes exploded in our faces. Mr. Rhodes, are you and Ms. Vance officially dating? Logan, what's your take on the current crisis at Rhodes Corporation? Will you be returning to the company? I kept my arm around Serafina the entire time, a placid smile on my face, and said nothing. She played her part to perfection, looking blissfully in love and oblivious to the chaos around us. The next day, my father was discharged from the hospital. He looked thinner, worn down. He asked to meet me at the old family estate, the house I hadn't set foot in since my mother died. The furniture was all the same, just covered in a thin layer of dust. My father sat in his armchair at the head of the room. Come home, Logan, he said, his voice heavy with exhaustion and a hint of pleading. I pulled out a chair and sat down. What about Alex? He's still young, my father deflected. He just lacks experience. Do you know what really happened, Dad? I cut him off. Our partners on the Southbridge project set a trap from day one. There were 7 poison pills buried in that contract. All it would take was one moment of carelessness from our side to trigger them. Before I left, I highlighted every single one of them and put the notes on the very first page of the project file. Guess what? Your brilliant son never even bothered to read it. My father's face turned ashen. He might not have noticed. That's right. He didn't notice, I said with a cold laugh. Not only did he not notice, he signed a supplementary agreement they put in front of him, effectively cutting off our last possible exit route. Dad, that's not a lack of experience. That's stupidity. Stupidity and arrogance. Putting him in that chair was the same as lighting Rhodes Corporation on fire yourself. Enough, my father roared. No matter what, he is your brother. He is not, I said, looking him dead in the eye. The day you brought him into our lives, I stopped having a brother, and I stopped having a home. I stood up. You want him back? Fine. Get him out of the company. Get him out of this city. And make sure I never see his face again. And you, I said, pointing at my father, will transfer all of your voting shares to me. I want 100% control of Rhodes Corporation. You're asking for my life, he gasped, his eyes bloodshot. You try to take mine first, I said coldly. The choice is yours. I turned and walked out. I knew he wouldn't agree. Not yet, but he would. The market just needed one final shock to the system, and I was an expert at providing shocks. After leaving the estate, I went straight to the office. It was my first time back in 3 months. The receptionists in the lobby were new faces. They stared at me, then started whispering amongst themselves. I ignored them and walked directly to the CEO's private elevator. Sir, I'm sorry, you can't use this elevator, a security guard said, stepping in my way. I glanced at him. A new hire. Didn't recognize me. It figured. I was now just the disgraced former heir. Let him come up, Kevin's voice crackled through the intercom. The guard hesitated, then stepped aside. I rode up alone, watching the floor numbers climb without a ripple of emotion. Ding. Top floor. The doors slid open. Kevin was standing there, his eyes a little red. Mr. Rhodes, he said, falling back on the old title. Kevin. I stepped out of the elevator. The entire executive floor felt dead, a complete reversal from the high-energy hum it had when I left. Where is he? I asked. In his office, throwing a fit. Kevin pointed toward the CEO's office. I could hear Alex's muffled roars. Useless. All of you are useless. Can't you do one simple thing, right? What am I even paying you for? The shouting was followed by the sound of something shattering. I pushed the door open. The office was a disaster zone. Alex was pointing at a group of department heads, screaming at them. These were company veterans, all of them. Right now, they were just standing there, heads bowed, taking it. My entrance brought the room to a dead halt. Alex's tirade died in his throat. What? What are you doing here? He stammered, a flicker of panic in his eyes. Just picking something up, I said, not looking at him. I walked to my old desk. It was buried under a chaotic mountain of files. I pulled open a drawer. Inside was the only photograph I had of my mother and me. In it, she was smiling warmly. I took the frame and wiped the dust off with my sleeve. Logan, Alex snapped, regaining his composure. Who let you in here? This is my office now. Right, I said. Frame in hand, I turned to leave. Stop. Alex rushed over to block my path. Are you here to laugh at me? Is that it? Yes, actually, I admitted without hesitation. You. His face flushed a deep red. But I have to say, you're even more useless than I imagined, I continued, looking him up and down. 3 months. That's all it took for you to run a $100 billion company into the ground. You're a special kind of talent. You know that? You're lying, he sputtered. The company is like this because of you. It's a mess you left behind. Is that so? I smiled. Well, you have fun cleaning it up. I moved to walk around him. Mr. Rhodes. Kevin's voice cut through the tension. He walked right up to me and pulled an envelope from his jacket. This is my letter of resignation. He pressed it into my hand. Then, he turned to Alex and gave a deep, formal bow. CEO Alex, I quit. Without another glance, he turned and followed me out of the office, leaving Alex standing alone, his face a kaleidoscope of white and green. The first domino I thought had just fallen, and the show was about to get a lot more interesting. Kevin's resignation was like a stone dropped into a stagnant pond. It didn't make a tidal wave, but the ripples spread quickly. He was my right-hand man. His departure sent a clear signal to everyone in the company. Logan Rhodes was done with the Rhodes Corporation for good. In the days that followed, a mass exodus began. First was the head of R&D, a genius I'd spent 3 years recruiting from Top Tech Hub. He threw his resignation letter directly at Alex's face. His reason was simple. I can't work under the leadership of an amateur. Alex was so furious he smashed an expensive ceramic teapot, but he didn't dare refuse the resignation. That man held the entire source code for the company's next-generation core product. If Alex didn't let him go, he could walk straight to a competitor, code in hand. That wouldn't just mean losses for Rhodes Corp. It would be a death blow. Next was the VP of Marketing, the Chief Financial Analyst, and several key project managers. These were the people I had personally promoted, the team I had built to conquer new markets. They respected me. For Alex, they had nothing but contempt. In less than a week, nearly a third of Rhodes Corporation's senior management was gone. Panic swept through the company. The stock price went into a free fall. My father called me again. This time, the anger in his voice was gone, replaced by a profound weariness. "Logan, I'm begging you. Come back. Whatever you want, we can talk." Oh, I was on a private island, basking in the sun. A Victoria's Secret model I'd recently met was feeding me grapes. "Anything?" Silence on the other end. He's still your brother." "Dad, it seems you still don't get it," I said with a light laugh. "Guess we'll wait a little longer." "I'm not in a hurry." I hung up and tossed my phone aside. The model leaned over and kissed my cheek. "Who was that? You sound annoyed." "Just a nobody." I took a grape from her fingers and popped it into my mouth. So sweet. Just then, a message from my private lawyer came through. "Mr. Rhodes, as per your instructions, we've begun approaching the executives who resigned. They have all expressed willingness to join the new company we are setting up." A wider smile spread across my face. A new company. That's right. I hadn't left Rhodes Corp to go on a bender. I was building my own kingdom from the ground up. If my father wanted to let that idiot sink the ship, then let it sink. Once it hit the bottom, I would salvage all the valuable parts and build a new vessel, one that belonged entirely to me. That was the real market opportunity, not inheritance. Creation. The crisis at Rhodes Corporation finally reached its tipping point. The trigger was a $5 billion bank loan coming due. I had personally negotiated that loan a year ago to fund our overseas expansion. The bank had bet on me and the company's future. Now I was gone, and the company's future looked like a dumpster fire. Naturally, the bank sent in a team to reassess their risk. The results of their due diligence were, predictably, catastrophic. They issued an ultimatum: repay the loan immediately, or they would seize the company's core assets as collateral. That moron Alex was running around like a headless chicken. The only solution he could think of was to sell off assets to cover the debt. He decided to sell the company's land parcel in the East District. That land was part of my mother's legacy to the company. It was also the last ace I'd left up Rhodes Corporation's sleeve. A massive lithium deposit had been discovered beneath it. Right now, only a handful of people knew. I had been waiting for the right moment to announce it, a move that would have tripled the company's stock price overnight. And now, Alex was about to sell this gold mine for pennies on the dollar, treating it like a worthless piece of industrial land. Kevin gave me the news while I was at a private racetrack. The roar of the engine was deafening. I hung up, slammed my foot on the accelerator, and shot onto the track. The tires screamed against the asphalt as I pushed the car to its limits, releasing the fury that had been building inside me for months. My father wasn't just destroying my career. He was about to destroy the last thing my mother had left behind. Lap after lap, I drove, until the fuel tank was empty. I pulled the car over, my hands shaking slightly. I took out my phone and dialed a number. "Hello, Warren? It's Logan Rhodes." Warren Sterling was one of the potential buyers for the East District land. He was also my father's oldest and most bitter rival. There was a pause on the other end. "Logan? To what do I owe the pleasure?" "Warren, I'm about to hand you the deal of a lifetime. Are you interested?" I leaned against the car door, watching the setting sun. "Oh, I'm listening. The East District land. Drive the price down as low as you can. Buy it. I guarantee you, in less than 6 months, you'll be shocked by what it's worth." There was a long silence. Warren was no fool. He knew I wouldn't make a call like this without a reason. "All right," he said, his voice firm. "I trust you." After I hung up, I knew. The final straw that would break the camel's back. I had just placed it there myself. Warren Sterling moved fast. He formed a consortium with several other developers and drove the price of the East District land down to a level that was almost insulting. To repay the bank, Alex had no choice. He gritted his teeth and signed the deal. The day the news broke, Rhodes Corporation stock was halted after hitting its daily loss limit. The board of directors went ballistic. The same members who had supported my father and Alex were now screaming for my father's head, demanding an explanation. My father was drowning, and Alex was so scared he was hiding at home, refusing to go out. And me? I was sitting in the office of my new company, calmly sipping a cup of coffee. My new firm was called Nirvana Capital. The meaning was obvious: rising from the ashes. The office's floor-to-ceiling windows looked directly out at the Rhodes Corporation tower. From here, That once gleaming monument to my father's success looked dull and gray. Mr. Rhodes. Kevin knocked and entered. They're all here. Good, I nodded. Send them in. The door opened, and more than a dozen former Rhodes Corp executives, led by our old head of R&D, filed in. Their expressions were a mix of excitement, relief, and gratitude. Logan, hope we're not too late, the R&D head said with a grin. Not at all, I smiled back. We're just getting started. We held a short meeting, laying out the new company's direction. These were my most trusted and capable allies. With them, I was confident I could rebuild, no, surpass, Rhodes Corp within 6 months. After the meeting, Kevin came in again, a strange look on his face. Mr. Rhodes downstairs. Your father and Alex are here. They're demanding to see you. I raised an eyebrow. They couldn't hold out for even a day. Let them wait, I said. I'll go down when I have time. Kevin nodded and left. I went back to my work, as if the two men waiting in my lobby were nothing more than a pair of unimportant salesmen. 1 hour passed, then 2. It wasn't until dusk that I leisurely took the elevator down. In the lobby, my father and Alex were still there, standing like statues. The moment he saw me, my father's eyes went red. He rushed forward and grabbed my arm. Logan, tell me, what is going on with the East District land? Dad, you already sold it, I said calmly. Why do you care? You knew something all along, didn't you? He asked, his voice trembling. Yes, I did, I admitted. I knew there was a gold mine under that dirt. A mine big enough to keep Rhodes Corporation dominant for the next 50 years. And you personally gift-wrapped it and handed it to your oldest enemy. My father swayed on his feet, the blood draining from his face. Why? He whispered. Why didn't you tell me? I did tell you, I said, looking straight at him. I told you to get that idiot out of my company. You're the one who wouldn't listen. I shook his hand off my arm. Alex, standing nearby, was already pale with shock. He was probably just now realizing the magnitude of his screw-up. Dad, he started, reaching out to steady my father. My father turned and slapped him hard across the face. Get away from me. You curse, he shrieked. Then, he turned back to me, and in a move that shocked everyone, he dropped to his knees. Logan, I was wrong, he sobbed, clutching at my legs. I'm begging you. Save the company. Save me. He clung to me, an old man weeping like a desperate, cornered gambler. My father was kneeling before me, crying like a child. The few employees still in the lobby stared from a distance, their faces a mixture of shock, pity, and a strange, quiet satisfaction. Walter Rhodes, the man who had ruled his corner of the business world with an iron fist his whole life, was finally brought low. I didn't help him up. I just stood there, looking down at him. You know, Dad, I began before Mom died. She held my hand and made me promise to protect Rhodes Corp. She said it was your life's work. I promised her I would. And for 10 years, I kept that promise. I took this company to heights you never dreamed of. I thought you'd be proud of me. Instead, you brought home a bastard son. You stood in front of the entire board and told them the company needed more heart, undermining everything I'd built. In that moment, I thought to myself, to hell with your life's work. To hell with my promise. My voice was quiet, but each word was a hammer blow to my father's heart. He started to tremble violently. I was wrong. Logan, I was so wrong. He kept repeating the only words he could manage. Alex stood by, white as a ghost, looking at me with pure terror. He was finally seeing me for who I really was. It's too late for that now, I said, pulling my leg free from his grasp. Rhodes Corporation is beyond saving. No, it can be saved. He looked up, a final, desperate hope in his bloodshot eyes. If you come back, we still have a chance. A chance. I laughed. How will you repay the bank? How will you buy back the land? How will you get back the clients and the talent you've lost? Dad, stop dreaming. The ship has already sunk. Not even God could save it now. The light in his eyes died. He collapsed on the floor, all strength gone. Then, what do we do? He mumbled. My life's work. There's one other way, I said slowly. What way? A tiny spark rekindled in his eyes. Bankruptcy and liquidation, I said. Let Nirvana Capital acquire all of Rhodes Corporation's valuable assets. He jerked his head up, staring at me in disbelief. You want to swallow the company? Not swallow, I corrected him. Rebirth. In my hands, it will become what it was always meant to be. Instead of being dragged into the abyss by a fool and an old man blinded by guilt. My father looked at me, his lips trembling, speechless. I knew this was worse than death for him. It meant he would have to personally erase the legacy of Rhodes Corporation from the world, only for it to become a stepping stone for my own. Think about it, I said, turning away. I walked toward the elevator, then stopped and looked back. Oh, and by the way, I added, After Warren Sterling bought the East District land, he immediately sold it to me. For double the price. So that gold mine? It's mine now. I stepped into the elevator and pressed the button. The doors slid shut, sealing off the sight of two utterly broken faces. The script, the power, had always been in my hands. There were just two clowns I'd cast in supporting roles. My father eventually agreed to my terms. He had no choice. It was better to let the company live on in another form than to have it torn to shreds by banks and creditors, even if it meant his complete and utter humiliation. For the next month, I was the busiest man in New York. Nirvana Capital officially began the acquisition of Rhodes Corporation for a fair, but certainly not generous price. I personally led the team, liquidating and restructuring the assets. The board members who once patronized me now follow me around like puppies, bowing and scraping. The crisis had turned their shares into worthless paper. Their only hope was that I might leave them some scraps. I didn't. I cleaned house, getting rid of them and every crony they had embedded in the company. Alex disappeared the day after my father signed the papers. I heard my father gave him a chunk of money and sent him abroad with instructions never to return. Good. Out of sight, out of mind. As for my father, he handed over his shares and retired. He seemed to age a decade overnight. He moved back to the old family estate, a lonely man in an empty house. I never went to see him. Some mistakes can't be fixed with an apology. On the day the deal was finalized, I stood on the top floor of the Rhodes Corporation Tower in my old office. The city lights sparkled below. Kevin stood behind me. "Mr. Rhodes," he said with a sigh of relief. "This place has the Rhodes name back on top." "No," I said, shaking my head. "From today on, this place only has my name on top." I turned to face him. "Have them take down the Rhodes Corporation sign. Replace it," I ordered, "with Nirvana." Kevin stared for a second, then gave a firm nod. "Yes, sir." I settled back into the large leather chair that was once again mine. It felt different now. Before, I was fighting for my father, for my mother's memory. Now, I was fighting only for myself. My phone buzzed. A text from Serafina Vance. "Congratulations, Mr. Chairman." I smiled and typed back 2 words. "You too." The fee I'd paid her was enough to make her untouchable in Hollywood for years. It was, in its own way, a win-win. "Drinks sometime to celebrate?" She texted back. "No time," I replied. The company is in the middle of a complete overhaul. Not all of us can afford to travel the world, sipping wine. I tossed the phone on my desk. Women? Love? They were distractions. Bad for the bottom line. The next big thing was building an empire. That was the only game worth playing. Warren Sterling invited me for a drink. We met in his private lounge at a club overlooking Central Park, the city lights a glittering carpet below. "Logan, that was a masterstroke," Warren said, pouring 2 glasses of Macallan 25. The amber liquid glowed. "You took the whole Rhodes empire without firing a single shot. The new generation truly surpasses the old." I smiled. "You're too kind, Warren. It wouldn't have been so smooth without your help." "I just gave a little nudge," he said with a wave of his hand. "Even without your call, I knew something was off about that land deal. I just didn't realize it was a damn lithium deposit. You play your cards close to the chest, kid." I took a sip of the scotch. "In this business, you always have to have an ace up your sleeve." "Damn right," he nodded, his eyes filled with a grudging admiration. "You're stronger than your father. Walter, he's too sentimental, cares too much about his image. Those are fatal flaws in our world." I didn't say anything. He was right. "But you've made a serious enemy of him now." Warren's tone shifted. "I imagine things between you two will be difficult." "It doesn't matter. I cut him off. We're on different paths. Wool and scythe. You know, you're just like your mother. Seemed easygoing on the surface, but underneath, stubborn as hell." Hearing him mention my mother, my hand paused. You knew my mother?" "Knew her." His gaze drifted toward the window, lost in memory. "Walter, your mother, and I, we all grew up together. Back then, your father wasn't some corporate titan. He was just a poor kid from the wrong side of the tracks. The line of guys trying to date your mother stretched around the block. I was one of them." I was stunned. My father had never mentioned any of this. "But in the end, she chose him," Warren said with a sad smile. "She said he had this fire in him, this refusal to lose. She liked that. They started Rhodes Corp from nothing. I went into the family business. We became rivals in the boardroom. And in love." He turned back to look at me. "Logan, do you know what she did before she died?" "She came to see me one last time. She asked me to keep an eye on your father. She said he had a tendency to be a fool, especially when it came to matters of the heart." Looking back now, she saw it all coming. I sat in silence, a heavy weight settling in my chest. My mother had known all along. "Warren," I said, setting down my glass. "Thank you for telling me this." "Don't mention it," He waved it off. I just don't want to see you make the same mistakes he did. Remember this, Logan. The most unreliable thing in this world is emotion. The only thing that's real is the power you hold in your own two hands. I nodded slowly. I'll remember that. When I left the club, the sky was dark. Standing on the street, watching the river of headlights flow past, I suddenly felt for the first time in a long while completely and utterly alone. Nirvana Capital moved at lightning speed. I restructured the assets from Rhodes Corp with brutal efficiency, cutting every unprofitable division and shelving any project with an uncertain future. All available capital was funneled into two sectors, renewable energy and artificial intelligence. I knew they were the future. My new employees were working around the clock, but no one complained. The reason was simple. I paid them too well. Bonuses, stock options, they got it all. All I demanded were results. They gave me results. I gave them compensation that crushed the industry average. It was a fair trade. One day, I was in a meeting about our new AI chip development when my secretary knocked. Mr. Rhodes, there's a Ms. Vance here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment. Vance? My first thought was Serafina, but she would have called my cell. Let her wait, I said without looking up, and the meeting continued. An hour later, I returned to my office. A woman was sitting on my sofa. It wasn't Serafina. It was a stranger, but there was something vaguely familiar about her face. Hello, Mr. Rhodes, the woman said, standing and extending a hand. My name is Eleanor Vance. Eleanor Vance. I didn't take her hand. I just studied her face. And then I knew. The eyes, the set of her jaw. They were like a more refined version of Alex's. You're Alex's? I'm his sister, she said with a small smile, retracting her hand. His half-sister. I raised an eyebrow. What do you want? My brother caused you a great deal of trouble, she began. He's young and foolish. On his behalf, I apologize. Her posture was deferential, but I wasn't buying it. An apology isn't necessary, I said. I've already gotten rid of him. The matter is closed. I'd appreciate it if you and your family stayed out of my life. Mr. Rhodes, you misunderstand. Eleanor shook her head. I'm not here to plead for him. I'm here to discuss a partnership. A partnership? I laughed. What could we possibly have to partner on? I know you're making a major play in the electric vehicle space, she said, her eyes shining with a calm confidence. And I have something you desperately need. Oh, I was intrigued. And what might that be? The world's most advanced solid-state battery technology, she said. At least 5 years ahead of anything currently on the market. My eyes widened. Solid-state batteries. The holy grail of the EV industry. Whoever controlled that technology controlled the future. And how did you come by this technology? I asked, my gaze sharp. Because the person who invented it, Eleanor said, pausing for effect before delivering each word with precision, was my mother, the same woman who was Alex's mother. I motioned for Eleanor to sit, then poured her a glass of water myself. What did your mother do? I asked. She was a theoretical physicist, Eleanor explained. She spent her entire life working on battery technology. Her dream was to invent a battery that was safe, efficient, and clean, something that could fundamentally change the world's energy landscape. Unfortunately, she never lived to see it. A shadow passed over Eleanor's face. When she passed away, the technology was still in the theoretical and early lab testing stages. Commercializing it would require a massive capital investment. She pulled a thick binder from her bag and placed it on the coffee table. This is all of her research. I've spoken to dozens of venture capitalists. They either thought the risk was too high or they wanted to buy the patents for pennies on the dollar. I refused. This was my mother's life's work. I won't let it be tarnished by short-sighted businessmen. I watched her, a newfound respect dawning. She was an idealist, but a pragmatic one. So why come to me? I asked. Because you're not like them, she said, meeting my gaze. I've done my research on you. You can be ruthless, but you have vision. You don't just look at the next quarter, you look at the next decade. And you're not afraid to spend money to achieve your goals. But most importantly, she added with a slight smile, we have a common enemy. I understood. She meant my father. When my mother got involved with Walter Rhodes, she had no idea he was married, Eleanor said, her voice even. By the time she found out, she was already pregnant with Alex. Walter offered her money to have an abortion and disappear. My mother refused his money and raised Alex on her own. She worked on her research while raising the two of us. It was difficult. Alex grew up hearing kids call him a bastard. He carried a lot of shame and resentment. He wanted to prove himself, to earn Walter's approval. That's why when Walter showed up years later, offering to bring him into the family, he was so quick to believe him. He thought it was the fatherly love he'd always craved. He didn't realize it was just a selfish old man's pathetic attempt to assuage his own guilt. That charade destroyed him. It nearly destroyed you. Eleanor looked at me. So, Mr. Rhodes, let's work together. I provide the technology. You provide the capital and the platform. We build this thing together. We create an energy empire far greater than Rhodes Corporation ever was. And we let Walter Rhodes see, once and for all, exactly what he threw away. I looked at Eleanor Vance, and I had to admit, she had me. Her proposal was perfect. It landed right in the center of my ambitions. Solid-state batteries were a field I'd wanted to enter, but the technological barrier was too high. Now, she had just handed me the key, and she'd attached it to a revenge plot I couldn't possibly refuse. I'll need to see the complete research and all the lab data, I said, and I'll be bringing in a third-party team to validate it. Of course, she agreed instantly. The science will speak for itself. And the terms. I only want a 30% equity stake for the technology, she said. The rest is yours. I have only one condition. The future company must be named after my mother. I nodded. Deal. We stood and shook hands. No contracts, no lawyers. But we both knew this verbal agreement was more binding than any document. It was forged from shared vision and a shared enemy. After Eleanor left, I sat alone in my office, watching the city lights come on. For the first time in a long time, a thrill of pure excitement coursed through me. The fight with Walter and Alex was over. That was just a childish warm-up. The real game was just beginning. My opponents were no longer my foolish, emotional family members. They were the top players in the world. I picked up my phone and, after a moment's thought, sent a text. It was to Seraphina Vance. Interested in being the face of my new company? The kind that will be worth $100 billion in a few years. Her reply came almost instantly. Of course, Mr. Chairman. But you should know my endorsement fee is very, very expensive. I smiled. Expensive? In this world, the most expensive thing was never money. It was opportunity. It was the future, and I was about to become the one who handed it out. I stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the glittering, sprawling city below. Nirvana. It was the perfect name. The old world was dead. The new one was rising from the ashes.